Hello, my name is Xavier, and I use they, them pronouns.
My name is Henry, and I use he, him pronouns.
And my name is Ben, and I use he, him pronouns. And we are Model UN. Today
UN.
We will be discussing the 1995 film Safe, starring Julianne Moore, directed by Todd Haynes. Now, this movie, the essence of it, it is supposed to be a psychological drama film, and just some quick first reactions. What did that film make you guys feel?
Empty, void. I watched at the end of
Yeah,
that movie, I just felt like just nothingness. It was kind of crazy because there's just like such a profound emptiness
yeah.
at the end of that movie. It's like, holy Christ.
It also hits so hard now that the coronavirus pandemic is really, we've
Yeah.
got enough time to digest it.
100%.
It's a very hard hitting movie.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, for me, I just sort of just lost my sense of self. Like right when the movie ended, I was like, well, what am I? What what exactly is everything?
Yeah,
Like what
Yeah.
that's a
I
great.
just sort of lost myself for like a few minutes after. I just had to like sit there and just contemplate, you know,
Yeah.
what exactly I was feeling. Takes a while to gather those feelings.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like a confusing movie to watch because the whole time you're like confused about just the situation and like this woman Carol who just feels so strange from the jump.
Julianne Moore did a
From the
wonderful
get-go,
job.
Oh,
Uh,
crazy.
Julianne Moore did an amazing job just portraying
honestly.
someone who's going through something like this, because I felt exactly as uncomfortable and, I guess rattled and confused as she did while watching this. It was a very, very compelling performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So real quick, diving into the cinematography, I honestly think
Hmm.
that's part of what made her character feel so, I guess, unnerving. This movie was, in a sense,
Yeah.
very unnerving. The first thing I actually walked away with was I was thinking there is something that they're doing. They're putting some sort of audio. There's this low rumble the entire time. And during the scenes where Carol has an episode, it gets a bit louder. And in correspondence with that, the shots begin to zoom. Like, for example, in that dinner party scene where she has I believe it's a seizure,
Hmm.
or
Mhm.
goes into some form of, yeah, the shot as she's sitting down with the two friends next to each other and the child in her lap, uh, it begins to zoom in. The walls are closing around her. It's harder and harder to breathe. Her anxiety is getting the best of her inside her own head. Shots like those really made the character pop.
Hmm. Yeah, because I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, the zoo. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, but I was just gonna say, like, with the zooms combined with the rumbling, combined with like everything, it sort of becomes more unorthodox and sort of like frantic. And the way that whenever she has a seizure, especially at the dinner party scene, when they zoom in, not only is she uncomfortable, but we as an audience we also become uncomfortable at
It
the
is
at the
so
sight of all of the
uncomfortable.
frantic use of the camera. It makes us so it makes just the scene so frantic and anxiety inducing that it's we as the audience feel kind of what she's feeling too.
Exactly. It's like we're suffocating with her. She clearly goes into some
Yeah,
sort of respiratory failure, and she sort of like can't breathe. She's like gasping for air. And with each gasp, the camera moves closer into her until all you can see is this horrified look on her face.
Yeah.
yeah, and the
And
cinematography reflects that.
yeah, I mean, those close-ups too are so interesting because, like, in these moments of distress, that's when we feel the closest to her. Because the audience, the entire movie, at least for me, felt so far away from Carol. Like and the cinematography shows that like there's all these long shots of her and she looks so small. It almost feels like we're studying her, and then when she has her episodes we're like really looking in and trying to gaze like what is going on with this woman. And it's just this like strange scientific feel to the cinematography. She's an experiment.
Yeah, it seems like she's there with us. Like for example, uh, in the car scene where she first starts getting some sort of coughing attack from the truck in front of her and the chemicals produced by the truck, we don't actually see the truck or see the road for as long as we see Carol in the driver's seat behind the wheel, coughing and hacking and struggling to breathe. And the zoom happens there too. I didn't really quite make a note of the roar, probably just because of all the noise from the car and, of course, Carol. But once she gets that episode, I agree, Xavier. We're right there with her.
Mm.
We're really right there with her while she's suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of like the treatment of suburbia in the movie? Because to me, like that, like Carol's whole life feels almost artificial and so strange.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, the house itself seems overwhelming to her. As it's been established, she hasn't actually lived in this house for as long because this is the husband. I totally forget the husband's name.
Yeah.
It's her husband.
It's gonna come to me.
Yeah, it's her husband. It's his second wife. And he has Rory, the son from the previous marriage. Rory actually plays a bit of a very interesting role because he's sort of like, he probably represents some of the audience as he doesn't really know this woman that well.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem that they're very close. He's sort of with us. He's a bit confused about what's going on with Carol also. In the scenes where he's like in the hospital with her or visiting her, the character blocking Rory, I noticed the character blocking Rory is usually in the background, while either the doctor or say her husband is sort of right there with her. Rory's kind of sitting off to the side. That's something I took note of with his character because, I mean, just him and Carol probably aren't as close.
Yeah.
And I think the cinematography really depicted that.
I think you're spot on with that. Because I mean, not only is Rory like kind of distant with Carol, but I feel like she's kind of got some distance with everyone, even her husband. I mean, like at first when like you see him and they want to have sex, but she's like, I'm not feeling well. You're not even sure if he's like if she's lying about it to just get out of sex.
Yeah.
Like that's never clear. So like she doesn't really have any relationships. That's why in most shots she's alone.
Yeah, and it seems like the world around her is sort of just closing in with not many people to help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It just seems very representative of the state of mind Carol's in, because even as you said, Xavier, at the beginning, even before Carol goes, on this really harrowing journey of going through this environmental illness or mental illness or whatever it actually is, she was alone before that, and that distanced her even further because no one really understood what she was going through. Didn't seem like they tried to, but regardless, it seems like she was really going through that alone.
Yeah.
I just like took a lot of note on suburbia in general in this movie because her house almost feels like a shield. Like
Yeah,
she lives in this one environment, this one house, and nowhere else. And every shot of her street just feels so fake. It's like the same lampposts, the trash cans put in the same spot right next to every house. It's like that too lends to just the eeriness that I got from this film is that everything in it feels like fake and just kind of a shield of privilege that Carol is hiding in to feel safe.
I
absolutely.
mean, yeah. I mean, suburbia is. I mean, suburbia portrayed in films is usually eerie, and the fact that everything did look the same and did sort of look like calculated, really gave sense to the point that she really did seem sort of trapped in this sort of cycle of like. She really did seem trapped
Yeah,
in that in her state. It's
She
like the house is kind of a
also,
metaphor for her own mental state. Was my point.
exactly.
yeah, it's big, but there's not much in there. And it all seems kind of hazy. For most of the
Yeah,
movie, she seems kind of dazed, kind of not very alert, sort of numbed, to really even figure out what's going on, not even with her, but with the relationship she has with people. I feel like that could be indicative of the character too, because she's got this great big house, but no one else there with her.
No.
yeah. And again, I just think that's sort of like a small metaphor for what's going on in her head because, like, it's of course the house is so big and but it just still feels so empty. Like her life still feels empty and hollow.
Yeah. I think you're spot on with the metaphor for her head because I think even the viewer, we're inside the house and we still don't really get to her thoughts. She still feels walled off to us, and we don't really get it until that last close-up shot where like she's just a corpse pretty much with the lighting and repeating her guru's like advice, showing that like there's just kind of nothing going on in there, or and she's
Yeah,
trying to find that.
yeah, that blissful cult
Yeah.
that was introduced halfway through the movie really took
Mm.
quite the impression on Carol because within a couple of weeks she was really part of them. Not even part of them, she was like super duper involved.
Yeah.
She would go to all these things. She'd even
Completely
cook for
integrated,
them.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'd cook for them with Chris, and she definitely had her mental state sort of invaded and taken over. And I don't think it was very strong to begin with, her mental space,
Yeah.
because it was
I
invaded
mean,
so
again, like her,
easily.
yeah, yeah. My point was like her mental state can be so easily her mental state. She can just be so easily swayed and so easily like so easily her mind can be so easily changed.
Yeah,
And
because she just wants community, pretty much. That's like what we get the whole movie. She just wants people. Right? She goes to that book club and she doesn't say anything besides that she's like a sucker for milk. Um, and like she just wants people, and she so clearly feels alone that I think she almost like just fully accepts getting launched into this cult.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because she doesn't
It
really
was,
recognize it as a cult. She just recognizes it as community. She recognizes it as
Exactly.
people being around her who take an interest to her, and that's the only thing she cares about. She
Right.
she just wants people physically there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. The cult, the scenes there, and the cinematography in there, because actually a lot of what this movie is the movie telling you stuff rather than the characters. Carol doesn't figure out for herself what's going on with her. She hears from either her husband or that commercial that she saw that it might be the environment. She doesn't find the cult or the place Renwood on her own. She finds it from somebody else.
Hmm.
These are all either coming from places outside of Carol's mental space that are all just sort of just locking in. They're all, and eventually, of course, it all becomes the close in, and that's represented by so many choices in the cinematography, like her living in an igloo, in an isolated space, even in an isolated cult.
Yeah.
She becomes isolated from the isolators.
Right.
And that really speaks volumes to who Carol actually is.
Yeah, I mean, she's totally confused, I think. I mean, I think that that last shot hit so close because, like, yeah, she's, like you said, isolated from the isolators, but she's also trying to like psych herself into feeling fine and feeling good. And you could so clearly see, Carol, you're not doing great. But you see it in her face so obviously. Like, she looks gone.
Yeah.
She looks like a lost person.
Yeah.
And instead,
Yeah.
she's trying to contradict herself and be like, "I love you, I love you." It's that scene is so messed up, man.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that, oh my God. It's, you guys go on, but it's just, God, that scene just made me very, very uneasy.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the close up
There
combined
was-
with her expression, combined with her words, just it.
Yeah,
this
the whole
whole
thing.
movie built up to that, I feel like. It
100%.
all built up to that because she had never said anything close to that or even exhibited it. She seems rather reserved, shy, unsure of herself, wouldn't even try a fruit diet with her best friend.
Yeah.
Carol wasn't very adventurous, accepting this or that. But eventually, as the movie goes on, she becomes so invested in herself and other things that she joins a cult in New Mexico and is living in an igloo and telling herself, "I love you," in the most sinister, crazy way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Carol's eventual, I guess, descent into madness really does revolve around those close-up scenes where the audience can really kind of gauge what's in her mind. And the narrative of the movie actually plays on that a lot. The
Mhm.
narrative of the movie, a lot of it follows what Carol's going through and where she goes, rather than the environmental illness itself, or what's going on in Carol's family, or what physically is happening to her body. It's mostly about what is going on in Carol's head.
Mhm.
And so all those close-ups shots providing insight to the audience proves really important in all those cases to contribute to the narrative.
Yeah. And I think also those close-ups are just so important with connecting Carol to the viewer, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that first scene where she's introduced, and she like starts freaking out about the couches being the wrong color, like, you're not really like shown to like Carol. You're kind of like, all right, who is this lady? But those close-ups make you like really, really feel for her, despite there not really being any reason for you to like her that well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's not somebody that's super relatable, an affluent housewife from living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of people like her, but this does actually do kind of make a point about U.S. society that anyone can kind of get nowadays involved in basically anything
Mhm.
because of just the rapid industrialness of everything and how available things are with the internet
Mhm.
and even TV commercials back then. You can find yourself
Yeah.
somebody who never in a million years would be doing something as crazy as living in an igloo in New Mexico.
Right.
after being a housewife in Los Angeles,
Ohio,
you could
yeah.
find yourself doing that.
Yeah.
Times are changing, and it's taking a physical toll on her too, with the environmental sickness. So it's a mental and a physical toll, which is a pretty clever allegory to U.S. society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Carol isn't ready for the times to change. That might be heavily implied because she's physically not ready. Her
Yeah.
body can't handle the toxins and the ozones and this and that. But maybe Carol's content being a housewife, which is becoming less and less common.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I guess in modern society now, women can join the workforce without being,
But
discriminated.
I mean, we do have to remember
As
though that
often.
this was made in 95, right? So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to say housewives were still more common like 20 years ago, but like there's definitely been a significant change from when this movie was made until now. But the fact that Todd Haynes was already sort of not predicting this change, but like showing people into the psyche of an otherwise like dull member of society, the housewife, showing that like taking a look at a member of society who's not really explored a lot, or who's explored but only as a function to serve the husband, looking at only the housewife. I felt like was a very interesting part of the narrative, and so because usually when you get a housewife in a movie back then, it'd be more focused on the husband, and then the wife would just be sort of it. But now they sort of flipped that. And for 1995, I think that was pretty progressive.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Xavier.
Oh, all right. I mean, I also think this is like a kind of a trope with housewives in general, but I think this movie does it really well. It kind of shows at the beginning that she's already in a hyper-controlled, isolated environment. She's already in this suburb that's pristine, and like that loneliness is just kind of ingrained in that, I think. Just like she's already in a bubble, she's beginning the journey just by being a housewife. And I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for housewives obviously, but a lot of them in media are just portrayed as these lonely, like sad people that just do chores around the house. And she's trying somewhat to socialize and get out of that hyper controlled environment, but she's too scared of anything and can't leave the suburbs, so finds a way that's even more isolating to leave the suburbs and escape like her mundane life.
Yeah, I agree with Xavier. They make a great point because Carol at the beginning of the movie is isolated, but relatively healthy in Los Angeles. But at the end of the movie, she's also isolated and not healthy, as a matter of fact. But she's way less healthy, both physically and mentally. But at the very end, she's still Carol.
Yeah.
She appears to love herself at the very end. At least she sort of accepted who she is, or at least that's what it seems like is going on in her head. Who instilled that? Are they trustworthy to instill that? That's another topic.
Mm-hmm.
But Carol sees herself in the mirror at the very end for who she is. And she just trying to think of the word, like a zombie-like state in like some sort of trance. I love you.
She just sort of
keep
stuck.
saying that. Yeah, she's stuck.
Yeah.
She could move into the desert and still be as isolated as in a metropolis like Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're all pretty close to that, I think, is what at least what that opening said to me, like on reprocessing it.
Yeah. that final scene sticks with you so much.
Yeah, I've been thinking
It
about
really
that
does.
since
Yeah.
we watched it.
Yeah.
Since we watched it, that's like that's kind of what's been on my mind because that's like the one scene that one of the. I mean, first of all, the whole movie stuck out to me, but I feel like that particular scene stuck out to me.
Yeah.
That particular final sort of feel.
Because it does really feel like the whole movie is building up to that. We're so
Yeah.
far away from Carol until the
Yeah.
very end, where we are close enough to understand her, and still don't.
And still don't exactly.
Yeah, we still don't get her, and we get so
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason we don't get her again is because her world and her life and her head are so empty.
Yeah. Like what?
Once again, the cinematography, even in the very end, when she finds a community, there are still all these shots of her walking from one place to another, and those massive mountains, the environment around her just looks gigantic. It's similar to the piano, how they showed the New Zealand landscape with the mountains looking huge. Only this time, when it comes to Carol, she actually does come from a place of privilege, and she's empty.
Mm-hmm.
Yet she's empty,
Yeah.
so to speak. No matter where she is, the environment or whatever is truly causing her to isolate herself even further is all around her. And the cinematography really shows that.
No.
Yeah.
The cult, though, in every scene that Carol is alone in the house, the shots are almost identical. It's her, the very wide shot of her alone in this huge room.
Mm-hmm.
But with the cult, they're all sitting together, eating or singing or talking. They're all together, which gives the illusion of a community. But as we know, it is like psychological manipulation in order to make tons of money from people like Carol.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the cult is so interesting too, because the way she interacts with those people, like when she's doing her like big speech, I think it's her birthday or something, and she's doing a speech, and like she just can't get the words out. She like there's all these people around her that are, they might be pretending, they might not, to care about her, and yet she like still can't really let out any emotion, and still feels walled off. And like to me, that was the click where it's like, oh, she's gonna go further, because there's so much nervousness with her just dealing with people. It feels like that. I don't know, like that scene, I saw that and I was like, oh, it's inevitable that she's just gonna go as far as possible, because she can't even interact with these people.
It seems that the group could possibly be as fake as Carol's illness.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously not to say that it is indeed all in her head, but it's very possible that the group could just be a bunch of like-minded people, or like absent-minded people. Can't really think as much for themselves as they need something else to do. They need to go to aerobics class. They need to go shop for couches. They need to go fill this huge emptiness.
No.
And in a way, fill this huge empty house with all sorts of, I guess, messages and things. And it eventually takes a toll on their psyche. It breaks them down so much that they're willing to join this random cult in New Mexico.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it goes along with the rest of the movie, just everything feeling artificial. You don't know it's real. This cult might be real. Her illness might be fake. Who knows? Who knows? That's the big question in this movie. No one knows what's going on.
And like, who knows? No one knows what's going on, and we're just not given enough
Yeah.
to like even figure that out. I feel we're given just enough to like kind of understand what's going on, but I feel like we're deliberately, there's some stuff that's deliberately left out of her narrative that we could usually put the pieces together, but I think it was deliberate to leave it sort of open, kind of. I don't know. I felt like this is just me going off a little bit here, but I feel like um even with like all the close-ups and the fact that it is her point of view pretty much the entire movie, the fact that we're still not able to completely understand what the heck she's going through is just very like, it's like
Frustrating.
it's like an abstract painting. You want to understand it so bad. There's like, you want to like understand it so bad, yet you just physically cannot.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
it,
maybe like a bad allegory.
no, I actually think that's true. There are desperate searches throughout the movie for answers with what's going on. It leads to people being so desperate that they end up joining a cult. But I mean, it even boils into frustration. And you can see that on the husband. You can see that on the doctor. You can see that in Carol.
See that.
Eventually, the husband has a bit of an outburst where he goes, not everyone has a headache every damn week every damn day of the week or something like that. This confusion, days, unanswered questions boils into all sorts of emotions for everyone but Carol. She doesn't seem to have many emotions besides fear.
Yeah.
But then again, she's also taken care of at every step of the way. Even when she is back in the cult, she is pretty much taken care of.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's our time. We've been Model UN.
Of course.
We've been Model UN.
Absolutely.
And
we'll see you the next psychologically
we'll see you next
damaging
cycle.
film we watch.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.